The moment the room goes quiet, you expect peace. You expect the mental chatter to settle down like dust in a sunbeam. But for most of us, the exact opposite happens. The second the external noise stops, the internal noise screams. It's almost aggressive, isn't it? That sudden vacuum of sound isn't filled with tranquility. It's filled with a barrage of thoughts, memories, and anxieties that seem to have been waiting for this precise moment to ambush you.
You lay there, and suddenly, your brain decides it's the perfect time to remind you of that embarrassing thing you said 5 years ago, or to draft a list of every potential catastrophe awaiting you next week. It feels like self-sabotage. It feels like your own mind is turning against you. But what if I told you this isn't a malfunction? What if this torment is actually a biological default setting that kept your ancestors alive, but is now slowly driving you insane?
Welcome to the world of the Default Mode Network, or DMN. Neuroscientists discovered this network almost by accident. They noticed that when a person stops focusing on a specific task, when they stop working, reading, or solving problems, the brain doesn't reduce its activity. Instead, a specific interconnected series of brain regions lights up like a Christmas tree. This is your brain's screensaver mode, but unlike a computer screensaver, it is chaotic, energy-intensive, and relentlessly focused on one subject: you.
The pain of silence is rooted in evolutionary biology. In a primitive environment, total mental relaxation was a threat to survival. The DMN emerged as an adaptive mechanism to prevent this, functioning as a persistent background processor. Rather than allowing for pure stillness, it prioritizes scanning for environmental hazards, evaluating social standing, and simulating future threats based on past data. The default mode network is essentially a time travel machine. It is incapable of being in the now. Its entire function is to shuttle you between the past and the future. It pulls up autobiographical memories to see what went wrong, and then constructs hypothetical future scenarios to ensure you don't make the same mistakes. This is brilliant for survival, but it is catastrophic for happiness. In a modern world where tigers aren't hunting us, the DMN hunts for the next best threat: your self-esteem. The DMN is particularly obsessed with social standing. In a tribe, being disliked meant death. So when you are idle, your DMN activates and asks, "Did I offend my boss? Why didn't they text back? Do they think I'm a failure?" This isn't insecurity, it's misfired evolution. Your brain treats social rejection with the same severity as physical pain, and the DMN is the radar system constantly pinging for signs of that rejection. A famous Harvard study by psychologists Matthew Killingsworth and Daniel Gilbert produced a striking conclusion: a wandering mind is an unhappy mind. They found that we spend about 47% of our waking hours thinking about something other than what we are doing. And here is the kicker: people were consistently less happy when their minds were wandering than when they were focused, even if they were thinking about pleasant things. The act of leaving the present moment itself seems to create a subtle background hum of dissatisfaction.
This explains the paradox of relaxation. You work hard all week dreaming of the weekend. You finally sit on the couch, turn off the TV to read or nap, and suddenly you feel worse. You feel restless. This is because low-demand environments are the playground of the DMN. Without a task to anchor your attention, your brain defaults to problem-solving mode. It starts looking for cracks in the foundation of your life simply because it has nothing else to do.
In psychology, we call this rumination. It's the repetitive rehearsal of negative thoughts. The DMN loves loops. It will replay a conflict over and over, trying to find a different outcome that doesn't exist. This loop requires immense cognitive energy. That's why doing nothing can leave you feeling more exhausted than a full day of focused work. You aren't resting, you are running a marathon of anxiety in your own head.
It gets more serious. Brain scans of individuals with clinical depression and anxiety disorders often show a hyperactive default mode network. Their brains are too good at connecting disparate negative events into a coherent narrative of failure. The DMN weaves a story. I failed that test, which means I'm stupid, which means I'll never get a job, which means I'll die alone. It connects dots that shouldn't be connected, turning isolated incidents into character flaws.
So, how do we stop it? Is silence the enemy? No. The enemy is the uncontrolled DMN. To fight it, we need to introduce its biological rival, the task-positive network, or TPN. The brain operates on a seesaw mechanism. When the DMN is active, the TPN is quiet. But when the TPN activates, the DMN is forced to shut down. They are anti-correlated. You cannot be fully in both modes at the same time.
The task-positive network activates when you are engaged in a demanding task that requires external attention. This is why you feel a strange sense of peace when you are solving a difficult puzzle, playing a fast-paced sport, or deep in a complex work project. Even though the work is hard, your brain is quiet. The inner critic is silenced because the brain literally doesn't have the resources to fuel the DMN while the TPN is driving. This state of TPN dominance is often what we call flow. In flow, the self disappears. You lose track of time. You lose track of your body. And most importantly, you lose track of your neuroses. The irony of the human condition is that we are often happiest when we forget ourselves completely. We chase leisure to find ourselves, but we find peace when we lose ourselves in something meaningful.
Now, a warning. Many people try to silence the DMN by doom scrolling on social media or binge-watching TV. This is a trap. These activities are passive. They don't require enough cognitive load to fully engage the TPN, but they distract you just enough to prevent deep thought. It leaves you in a zombie-like limbo, often engaging the DMN in the background to compare your life to the highlights you see on screen, making the inner critic even louder.
So, how do we make peace with silence without constantly distracting ourselves? We have to train the brain. This is where mindfulness meditation comes in, not as a spiritual practice, but as a cognitive strength training. When you meditate and focus on your breath, you are manually activating the task-positive network. When your mind wanders, DMN activates, and you catch it and bring it back, you are doing a rep. You are strengthening the toggle switch between the two networks.
Studies show that long-term meditators have a DMN that is less reactive. They can sit in silence without the immediate onset of negative self-talk. They have physically altered the structure of their brains to decouple the sensation of self from the narrative of problem. They can observe the silence without judging it. They have turned the volume knob down on the inner critic.
You don't need to become a monk to fix this. You just need to be intentional. When you find yourself spiraling in silence, don't try to fight the thoughts directly. That's just more DMN activity. Instead, shift your anchor. Engage in a task. Write, draw, cook, organize. Do something that demands your hands and your eyes. Manually override the system by forcing the TPN to take the wheel.
Psychologists often recommend grounding techniques like the 5-4-3-2-1 method to break DMN loops. Name 5 things you see, 4 things you feel, 3 things you hear, 2 things you smell, and 1 thing you taste. This forces your brain to process sensory data from the outside world, instantly pulling energy away from the internal echo chamber. It snaps you back into the present moment, where the DMN cannot survive.
We need to reframe our relationship with solitude. Solitude is not the absence of people, it is the presence of oneself. If you can't stand being alone with your thoughts, it's a sign that your internal relationship needs work. The goal isn't to silence the mind forever, it's to change the nature of the conversation. Instead of an interrogation, make it a brainstorming session.
Interestingly, the DMN isn't all bad. It is also the seat of creativity and imagination. When properly regulated, it allows us to daydream, to envision better futures, and to connect abstract concepts. The problem isn't the network itself, it's the negative bias. Once you learn to control the switch, you can dip into the DMN for inspiration, and then switch back to the TPN to execute the vision.
Our modern world is designed to keep us in a state of constant, low-grade anxiety. We are rarely fully focused and rarely fully relaxed. We are stuck in the middle, constantly toggling, which burns out our cognitive hardware. We treat silence as a void to be filled with podcasts, music, or news, because we are terrified of what we might hear if the noise stops.
We must relearn the art of boredom. Boredom is the threshold you have to cross to get to peace. When you first sit in silence, the mud in the water gets kicked up. It's cloudy and chaotic. But if you sit long enough, past the discomfort, past the itch to check your phone, the mud settles. The water becomes clear. Most people bail out before the water clears.
Neuroscientists suggest it takes about 20 minutes for the nervous system to downregulate. If you try to relax for 5 minutes, you're just experiencing the withdrawal symptoms of stimulation. You have to commit to the silence. Give your DMN time to run out of fuel. Let the inner critic yell until it loses its voice. Only then does the true restoration begin.
You can rewire your default setting. Through practices like gratitude journaling and cognitive reframing, you can change the content of your DMN. Instead of defaulting to what went wrong, you can train your brain to default to what went right. It takes time, just like carving a new path through a dense forest, but eventually, the new path becomes the path of least resistance.
Think of your mind as a house. For years, you've let the DMN leave the TV on the horror channel at max volume in the living room. You've been afraid to go home. But you have the remote. You can change the channel. You can turn it off. You can renovate the house so that it becomes a sanctuary, not a haunted house.
Controlling your attention is the highest form of self-discipline. And this discipline leads to the ultimate freedom. Freedom from the tyranny of your own unbidden thoughts. Freedom from the ghosts of the past and the monsters of the future. When you master the switch between DMN and TPN, you become the master of your own reality.
So here is the challenge. Today, find 20 minutes. No phone, no music, no podcasts, no work. Just you and the silence. It will be uncomfortable. Your brain will protest. It will bring up your insecurities. Let it. Observe it like a scientist observing a specimen. Don't engage, just watch. See what happens when you refuse to run away. Eventually, the silence won't be something you endure. It will be something you crave. It will become the source of your power. While the world runs around in a chaotic panic, driven by their untamed default mode networks, you will have the ability to step back, disengage, and find clarity in the eye of the storm. Remember, the default mode network is not a villain. It is a part of you that is trying to protect you in an outdated way. Thank it for its concern, but politely decline its panic. Switch on your task-positive network. Engage with the world. Create. Move. Breathe. Step out of your head and into your life.
Your brain hates silence only because it doesn't know how to use it yet. Teach it. Turn the void into a canvas. Silence isn't empty. It's full of answers. You just have to be quiet enough to hear them. Don't let the noise win. Master your mind, and you will master your peace.